Hey, what's up, you guys? It's Poke Trainer Tyson here at the Pokemon Trainer Hub, and I'm revamping the channel a bit just because I miss yapping about Pokemon with you guys. If you could do me a huge favor, like, comment, subscribe, hit the link tree down in the description. It'll take you to all my socials and everything. We're going to be revamping the TikTok, revamping the Instagram, all that good stuff. Um, for those who don't know me and who are just now seeing me for the first time here, I'm a Pokemon collector. I collect one of every sealed product from my personal collection, and I'm a master set collector. I'm a small time Pokemon investor, and I am now, since the last time I was on this channel, a competitive player. My last competitive event, or major competitive event, I should say, was the Latin American International Championship. I did not do too well, but maybe we'll make a video, a tournament recap later. But that brings me to the topic of today's video. We've got a new set coming out this Friday in Japanese, Terastal Festival. It comes out in January in English, January 16th. We get Prismatic Evolutions, and it's bringing us a new set of Eeveelutions that may or may not be playable. We're going to take a look today, see about some maybe ratings of the Eevee and Eeveelution combos, see if there's any synergies that we see and any kind of deck building ideas that we have. So, without further ado, let's hop right into it. So, first thing I want to do is take a look at any single prize evolutions that might be good. So, we'll start with just a basic Eevee. We did recently get an Eevee in Surging Sparks that came out in November. I'm going to put up a picture of the Prismatic Evolutions ETB promo, though, just because the art is beautiful. It's going to go crazy for collectors. Different video, though. This card is an A for me. It's absolutely busted. If you're going to play an Eevee deck, this is the Eevee that you're going to play due to that boosted evolution ability. I've got my cards put up here, so you're going to see me look up a bit just to make sure I'm reading the cards verbatim. But the boosted evolutions ability says as long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, it can evolve during your first turn or the turn you play it. For folks that don't know, this completely busts the rules of the evolution cycle in the Pokemon TCG. You cannot traditionally evolve your Pokemon on the first turn you play them or on your first turn of the game. But you used to be able to way back in 2010 before they changed the way that Rare Candy worked. Now we can do it again with this Eevee, and I think this is the first time since 2010 where that was a thing. Could be wrong, but I don't think I am. This enables this deck to go a lot faster than the deck that might be sitting across from you at a table. And you'll see with some EVs that we get into later that this will allow for some turn one going second shenanigans that is going to really shake things up potentially. And that's another thing I want to say. This is all potentially. Of course, I have no inside information. Nobody does about what the new meta looks like, and these cards are coming out at an interesting time. So English rotation has happened at EUIC, the European International Championship, for the last 2 years. Uh, EUIC happens in early February. This set comes out in mid January. And for those who don't know, Pokemon sets are not tournament legal until 2 weeks after they release. So we could be in a situation where these cards come out January 16th, and then EUIC happens, and not only do they become legal for the first time, but they become legal in a brand new format where we have essentially lost tons of cards. There'll be no more sword and shield cards in rotation after this time. So we'll have to see how that shakes up if these do come out and that happens. Japan will have a format where these exist with sword and shield cards for sure, since it comes out Friday for them. But for us, we might be in a different situation. But bringing that up, there are a few other single prize evolutions. There are three that are tournament legal from Sword and Shield, and every evolution has had a card come out in Scarlet and Violet, just a basic one prize card. They're all bad, with the exception of potentially the main three. So Jolteon, Vaporeon, and Flareon all have single prize cards that have the same last attack with just a different name. So I'll pull up Flareon here as an example. So the attack costs fire, colorless, colorless, and it does 90 plus 90 more damage if your opponent's active Pokemon is an EX or V. So this is definitely a consideration due to the fact that we've got some support Pokemon that are EX and V that this would knock out. So you could take two prizes with a one prize card. You could take two prizes on Luminion. You could take two prizes on Squawkabilly if you're behind on prizes, and they have a Defiance Band, or you have a Defiance Band. You can take out Vesendipity with this attack. So it's a consideration as maybe a tech card in one of these evolution decks. Definitely not a card you could build your main attacker around, but if you're playing a Flareon in your evolution deck already, so you already have the fire, why not, or excuse me, a Flareon EX, why not throw the baby Flareon in there, right? So something to think about. Definitely not a mainstay, but other than these three, all the other basic evolutions just essentially aren't worth playing. So we're gonna skip over them. Won't focus on them much. That brings us to our first two prize evolution. So we're gonna go kind of in set order by typing. So we're gonna start with Leafeon, 270 HP. It's weak to fire. Um, being weak to fire is all right. Ceruledge is a deck, but only kind of. You're only really worried about Radiant Charizard in this format. That can come in and pop you late game for one energy and take two prizes. But the first attack for a grass and a colorless, Fresh Leaf Storm, 60 damage times the amount of energy attached to your opponent's Pokemon. uh, that could be a big deal. We live in a format where Teal Mask Ogerpon allows your opponent to accelerate a bunch of energy every turn, and you can use this first attack to punish them for that. I don't know that it warrants being its own deck. Maybe in a deck where you already play Grass Energy and you can tech one Eevee and one Leafeon EX, but um, not certain that that will make them all playable. And then the second attack for a grass, fire, and water, you can do 230 and heal 100 damage from each of your bench Pokemon. This is interesting because the format has cards like Dragapult that are mainly played in Regidrago, where they do 200 and then they can spread 6 damage to your bench Pokemon any way they like. There's also Dusclops in this format in Dusknoir, where they can drop 50 or 120 with Dusknoir onto one of your bench Pokemon, or I think it's one of any of your Pokemon. But if they drop it on your bench, what you can do is take one of their knockouts they were trying to set up preemptively away from them with this second attack. It's awkward to set up. I don't know that there'll be a deck that plays grass and water fire. 230 isn't necessarily a key number knocking anything. Well, you can take out like Iron Hands. You can take out some of these EXs that came out during the Scarlet and Violet era. So I'll take that back. 230 is a key number, but this might be one of the harder ways to do 230 in the format. So it might not be worth it. I'm gonna give this a B overall, just because that first attack can be usable and can punish decks that play a very relevant card right now. Another thing about all these evolutions is they are all Terra Pokemon, and the reason that's important is because they all have the Terra trait, meaning they can't take damage on the bench, so they can't use something like a Radiant Greninja that does 90 to two of your opponent's Pokemon, and they can't try and set up a knockout on one of your evolutions with the attack because you can't be damaged on the bench. They can do something like Lost Mine you with Sableye or Dusclops Curse Blast you because that drops damage counters, not does damage. But other than that, you're safe on the bench. It's built in Water Veil Manaphy. So it hasn't been super relevant yet, just because we have had more damage counter dropping than damage on the bench in the current format, but maybe it becomes relevant, so the Terra trait may come in handy. But yeah, Leafeon gets a solid B. Next, we're going to hop onto the fire type Flareon, 270, weak to water. And the first attack is what makes this probably a true high B tier evolution for me. So Burning Charge does 130 for a fire and a colorless, and you search your deck for up to two basic energy cards, attach them to one of your Pokemon, and shuffle your deck. Energy Acceleration is always powerful and always good in the game. We have maybe some different energy acceleration that might be a little better that doesn't take your attack for turn. You can use something like Crispin to go get those two energy, attach one and put one in your hand. You can use something like Glass Trumpet onto your baby Eevee before you evolve into Flareon to try and help get that energy acceleration in. But this does do damage with it. 130 can help set up attacks for later that are going to take big prizes for you. So that's at least interesting. It's quick to do. You can do it in one turn, no issue. The second attack, all the basic evolutions, so Flareon, Vaporeon, and Jolteon have the same second attack. For Fire, Water, Colorless, it does 280, and you can attack next turn. I don't know about the second attack because 280 will become a way less relevant number after rotation. It's probably the most relevant it's ever going to be right now with stuff like Regidrago and Palkia running around. You can one shot them. After rotation, you probably need to either not be doing 280 or doing way more than 280, right? You can take two prizes with 210, 230, and still be able to attack next turn, or 280 just isn't going to be enough, like on a Charizard or a Dragapult. So I'm not certain about the second attack on these things, but the first attack is at least interesting. Energy acceleration is always valuable and good, so that one is going to put it at a solid like B plus for me. Moving on to the water evolutions. This one, they're trying to give us a kind of wombo combo deal. And we'll take a look at the Vaporeon first because this sets up the first part of our wombo combo. So 280, weakness to lightning. Weakness to lightning is very bad right now. Anybody who's been playing Pokemon for the last year knows of Jake Gearhart's Night Terror monster. Iron Hands EX has an attack for lightning and 3 colorless energy that does 120. That says if you take a prize card with this attack, you take, or if you knock out a Pokemon with this attack, you take an extra prize card. You're out of Iron Hand's range slightly. They're going to be 40 short after weakness because you have 280. The most they can do is 240, but it's kind of easy to set you up. They ping you one turn, or they use a Dusclops to put the damage counters on. Then they amp you for 3 prizes, and the game's halfway over. So that's not great. But the attacks on this in the combo potential could make up for it. So Heavy Squall, the first attack for a water and a colorless, you do 60 damage to all of your opponent's EX, um, and you don't apply weakness or resistance. That should be a given, but they put it on a lot of these attacks. Um, so the reason why Heavy Squall is decent is because that 60 damage is very important for Glaceon, that we'll take a look at next. Of course, the Fire, Water, Lightning, 280 can attack next turn. We've talked about why that's not really great, but let's hop over to Glaceon. And Glaceon, 270, weak to metal. We'll look at the second attack first on this one just because it lines up with the other one. So for a Grass, Water, Dark, you just knock out one of your opponent's Pokemon with 6 damage counters on it. You see the combo? You go in with your Glaceon for a water colorless. Next turn, you switch into your Glaceon, or you go in with your Vaporeon, excuse me. Then you switch into your Glaceon and just start taking knockouts. If your opponent is playing a deck like a Raging Bolt, then you do the first attack and put 60 on everything, and then you potentially are taking knockouts every turn after that for 2 prizes with Glaceon, and you are winning the game in 3 swings with Glaceon. It's potential. It's cute. I don't know that it's viable because, at least in current format, we do have cards like Switch Cards. So the Raging Bolt example, what a good Raging Bolt player will do is dig for Switch Cards and then just start switching in and out of the active to heal some of that damage and kind of mess your setup up. Uh, you can do it with the Glaceon on its own. The first attack, Frost Bullet for a water colorless, does 110 and does 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So 2 attacks with Glaceon. Maybe this sets you up even to, if you're not trying to do the second attack, you can set something up to take 3 prizes in a turn, right? You go in and you swing into a Squawkabilly and drop 30 damage on a Charmander, or next turn you do the same thing, drop 30 damage on a Charmander. Now you take 3 prizes. Uh, it's potential. The combo itself is probably going to get a C for me. 270 is not a lot of HP in the current format, and there's ways around the whole I'm just going to start taking knockouts with the drop 60 damage and then use the second attack on Glaceon. So it's probably a C tier combo, but it's at least interesting and fun. I'll mess around with it a bit at locals just to see if I can get it off a few times. But that's our water evolutions right there. Now, the next evolution up, in my opinion, on paper is the best evolution. Just fresh out of the box, no games played. Jolteon EX, 260 weak to fighting. Second attack, same as the other big 3, 280, crazy energy, can't attack next turn. We're not worried about that. What we're looking at is Flash Spear. For a lightning colorless, you do 60 damage, discard 2 basic energy cards from your bench Pokemon, and do 90 more for each energy that you discard in that way. That's a smooth 240 damage to first turn going second. Um, the combo is pretty simple. You start an Eevee, play a Crispin, Glass Trumpet onto 2 Eevee on the bench. Done. Now, first turn going second, you're doing a full 240. This card will even do things like take out Lumineons with 1 energy, take out Squawkabillies with 1 energy, discarded because of the weakness. You can essentially just run over your opponent and start taking 2 prizes before they even get to set up. You also have free retreat. Always great to see free retreat, especially on a 2 prizer like this. So uh, this one, uh, face value, is an A tier evolution for me. No games played, of course, but has the most potential just fresh off of reading it. Um, I'd like to hear in the comments from you guys which evolution that you're most excited to play towards the end of the video, and if you agree that Jolteon seems to be the most powerful by the end of the video. There's another one I think that has some potential that's coming in the back end of this, but right now, current meta, I think it's more bark than bite. But that's kind of my take on Jolteon EX. It's just fast and strong. If you think about back in the day when you had like Jolteon VMAX, it was also the most played of these VMAX evolutions because it was fast and strong. The only one that can kind of be keep up a little bit was Sylveon VMAX, saw some play, but not as much as Jolteon VMAX. Moving on to the purple guys, we'll actually talk about our Sylveon that we already have in format, Sylveon EX. Came out in Surging Sparks, 270 HP, weak to metal. First attack for a Psychic and double colorless, Magical Charm, does 160 and you take 100 less damage the next turn. This one's interesting. I've seen it played in Lost Box recently at locals, and this can let you play the wall game and be annoying to your opponents, right? So if you're playing it in Lost Box, you can Mirage Gate to it, so you're doing the whole 160 instead of having to go Psychic and double colorless or double turbo to do 140. And you're two-shotting everything in the format with that. They're doing 100 less to you, so they have to work really hard to get the knockout, so there's potential there. The gimmick attack on this one is really the one that people like to use, Angelite, for a Psychic, Water, Lightning. You choose 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon and shuffle those cards and all cards attached back into the deck. And then if one of your opponent used the attack last turn, they can't use it this turn. Thank God for that, because that would get real messy real quick. They'd just be shuffling all your Pokemon back into your deck. Angelite is scary. As somebody who played Lugia last format and played it at the beginning of Surgeon Sparks format, the first time I played against Lost Zone Sylveon on live, my opponent never dropped their Eevee because they can attack. They could evolve with it the second they played it. They play their Eevee, switch it into the active, evolved into Sylveon, gate attach, and then put both of my Archeops back in my deck. And I proceeded to immediately lose the game. I was impressed and immediately had to scoop. Nothing you can do. So Angelite has some potential. I don't know if it has enough potential to be playable. This is another C tier one for me, but Magical Charm, honestly, in my opinion, is the better attack if you can get it powered up to do the full 160, so that you're two-shotting everything. I think it could be really good, and you're taking 100 less, so it'll allow you to outlast some decks. You might not be as strong, but you are tanky. Um, Moving on to the second to last Eeveelution and the other purple guy, we have Espeon EX. I love this card. This is the card I was saying might have some potential. Right now, it's definitely more bark than bite, but it's at least fun to read. So 270, and it is weak to dark. Dark weakness is terrible to have right now. You have cards like Roaring Moon, you have cards like Charizard EX that are going to one-shot you, no questions asked. But uh, cards have dealt with the dark weakness before and been kind of okay. So we'll take a look at these attacks and see if this card's even worth playing. For a Psychic double colorless, you do 160, discard a random card from your opponent's hand. Because it's not targeted like an Eerie where you get to choose the card, this one you have to get lucky to even hit anything relevant. But if you do, if you're playing that Charizard matchup and you discard their only rare candy in hand, you may have just messed up their whole next turn. So this card could be really good for the first attack. Really, what I'm excited about is the second attack. For Grass, Psychic Dark, Amethyst says devolve each of your opponent's evolved Pokemon by shuffling the highest stage evolution card into your opponent's deck. This is TM Devo on your opponent's whole board, except worse because you put all the cards back in their deck. So we'll use the Charizard matchup again as an example. If your opponent has played 3 rare candies, they go Charizard, Pidgeot, and you do this, could be game ending if they don't have their Charmeleon or they prized it, or that it's going to take them 2 turns to make that Charizard back if they don't already have that 4th rare candy in their hand. this could give you the opportunity to just go and sweep the game. You also have the option of dropping damage counters on your opponent's board. You know, drop 70 on the Charizard, 50 on the Pidgey, or 60 on the Pidgeot, and then take a late game Amethyst and take 4 prizes in a turn, take 5 prizes in a turn. If they have all those, if they have a lot of evolutions out, so there's something here that I want to make work. I want to take this deck to locals. I want to be annoying and make it work and just put everybody's stuff back in their deck. So we'll see. This one, in reality, is probably a C tier. Some high level player will take this deck to a regional and do well with it, but I don't know if the average player, or even at many events, like after that one person does well with it, people will know how to play against it, and that will be the run for Espeon. But I can at least have hope that we're gonna have fun with Espeon for a little while. Moving on to the last Eeveelution, it is definitely going to be the money card of the set. It is also, in my opinion, the worst Eeveelution of the set. Umbreon. I love Umbreon, but this card is bad. We'll talk about why in specifics. But 280, weak to grass. First knock against it. Weak to grass is terrible right now. We live in an Ogerpon world. Ogerpon just completely eats you. No questions asked. Easy money. 2 prizes for your opponent. Um, First attack for dark colorless. Colorless, you do 160. Your opponent's active is now confused. Confused is the status condition that matters very little. You can switch out of it pretty easily. And then of course, you know, they flip a coin. If they flip tails, they take 30. But okay, you could be doing something else. You could have just knocked that Pokemon out that turn instead of doing 160 and confusing it. And then Onyx is obviously the gimmick attack on here. For a Lightning Psychic Dark, you discard all the energy and just take a prize card. This attack is bad. I know it says take a prize card, and whenever we see you free prize card, great, but this is very, very not free. First of all, if you wanted to build an Umbreon deck and make it your main attacker, you still need to take 6 prize cards. So you have to be prepared to power this up and then discard the energy and power it back up 6 times. Your opponent will run you over by that time. This is very different than something like Pikachu EX. Pikachu EX says discard 3. So you can over put energy on Pikachu, saying, "I bet you can't knock this out next turn." Discard 3 and be ready with just an energy attachment next turn to take another prize. This you cannot do that. You only can play so many E switches, so many glass trumpets, so many crispins, so many different types of energy, right? To use that second attack. So maybe if Dark Weakness becomes very relevant and that first attack starts smacking things, then okay. But right now, because of the other dark decks you could be playing, you could just be playing Charizard EX. You could just be playing Roaring Moon. Um, they're just better than this card. And even if those didn't exist, I don't know that this card would be the one to put dark type Pokemon on the map. So this is going to get a F from me. If there was a tier below F, honestly, I'd put it there. But I just think it's not playable at all. But it's at least an Umbreon. The Umbreon collectors will have another Grail to put into their collection, and this is going to actually bring us into the last card we're going to talk about today. It is not an Eeveelution, it is actually an Eevee EX. So with Eevee EX, you have 200 and it's weak to fighting. This weakness to fighting can be an issue because you have stuff like Raging Bolt that plays Slitherwing that can just knock this out. But most of the time, unless you're playing Raging Bolt, the weakness to fighting won't be an issue. The attack is bad for Fire, Water, Lightning. You do 200. Weird attack cost. I guess you can Glass Trumpet to this Eevee, but 200 is not necessarily a very relevant number, and you are not hitting anything for weakness. So it's kind of a type deal. But the Rainbow DNA is where we get interesting. The ability here says once during your turn, if you have a Pokemon EX that evolves from Eevee, you may put it on this card to evolve it. You can't do this ability on your first turn or the turn you play this card. So you lose that super fast evolution with the baby Eevee, but you gain being able to evolve EX Pokemon onto another EX Pokemon, which you just can't do otherwise. Um, Reason for doing this, maybe you want 200 HP instead of 50, so you don't run the risk of getting O code. But that's not necessarily going to work because decks like Raging Bolt exist. Doing 210 is very easy for them. All they need is one Teal Dance on the Ogerpon, one attachment, one Professor Sada, boom, I'm doing 210. And now you've given them 2 prizes instead of giving them one. So I don't know about this one. On the plus side of this, because EVEX and Eevee have two different names technically, you can now play up to 8 Eevee in your deck and give yourself a chance to have more Eeveelutions get out. Maybe build a true Eevee box deck. Maybe you play 4 baby Eevee to a big Eevee. Um, so that's a plus, but I'm not sure how necessarily relevant or irrelevant that will be. So this is going to get a C from me, uh, just because the use case is very narrow, but at least it's a use case and it's there. The ability is fun. So, and I'm pretty sure it's only ever existed on the EVGX before. Now, EVGX did not see any play, but it also didn't have all these other evolutions. Um, the another thing I wanted to talk about with the Umbreon, that I've had this argument, or not argument, discussion with a local on Sunday. This Umbreon Onyx attack kind of brings back the vibe of Burst GX on Blacephalon, but that's it. It's just a vibe. It's not the same thing. It's very different. Burst GX took 1 energy. You did not have to discard it, and it was on a basic Pokemon, so you could just do it out of nowhere. Umbreon EX is a stage 1. It takes 3 energy of different types that you have to discard every turn. So no, not the same thing. If you thought about it, if you're like, ooh, but I love that type of vibe, this is not it. I'm sorry, Burst GX is not coming back. So if you want to go through the rankings for the evolutions, Jolteon gets an A from me. The Vaporeon Wombo combo with Glaceon gets a low B, B minus, maybe even C. Flareon gets a B plus. Sylveon gets probably a C. The Espeon, I'm cope giving Espeon a B because I want it to work, but it's really probably a C or D. The Umbreon gets an F. And then the EVEX gets probably a B. You know, it's got some good use case, and it's probably only gonna be an EVEX for a turn before you evolve it. Baby Eevee is broken from the ETB and from Surging Sparks. If you don't already have a playset and you plan on playing an Eevee deck, get a playset. Even if you want the ETB art, the regular ETB art is probably only going to be like $2. If you're a true max deck player and you want the Pokemon Center one, Godspeed. That's going to be a pretty penny to get, but other than that, guys, that's kind of my review of the Eeveelutions and their playability from Prismatic Evolution in English or Terastal Festival in Japan. Excited to see this weekend these cards start getting play and see what the Japanese players can come up with because they're always cooking over there. Again, guys, please do me a huge favor: like, comment, subscribe, share the video. Go click the link tree in the bio, take you to all my socials. We are revamping. I'm going to be posting things there regularly, multiple times a week on TikTok, Instagram, everything. Again, guys, it's been Poke Trainer Tyson here at the Pokemon Trainer Hub, and thanks for watching. Talk to you later. Bye.